Welcome to Church at Home with Rachael for Monday, the 1st of August. This summer is going by so quickly, isn't it? I want to give thanks to Bo of the Fifth Column for putting this idea in my head. He was talking the other day about Vice President Harris and her speech that she was giving, in which she was sitting at the table wearing a mask, and she introduced herself as a woman whose pronouns are she and her, and then explained that she was wearing a blue suit. And he mentioned that some people had taken issue with that, how ridiculous that was. But the purpose was recognizing that the whole purpose of what she was doing was talking to people about the rights and of equal rights and things like that, and the acknowledgement that there were people there who were witnessing that speech that were cognitively impaired. They were blind. They weren't able to see what she was wearing. And although many people, of course, know that Vice President Harris is a woman, for those who might not have known, she made that up front and obvious. The same thing when I was checked it out on the screen, they had someone doing sign language. Just a reminder of the many ways that we need to reach out to one another for full communication. I think I've talked a little bit before about body language and how important it is to remember that we communicate not just with our words, but we communicate with our eyes, and we communicate with our body language with our hands. I talk a lot with my hands. The things that we do non-verbally often tell people more about who we are and what we're saying than the actual words we use. But that's with the assumption that people can actually read those nonverbal cues. If someone is blind, or for instance, if you're doing something over the phone and they can't see the physical person, then that actually cuts back on the ability of a person to be able to fully understand what is being communicated. Now, given there are times when it's good that maybe body language can't be seen, because sometimes our words do not match our body language. How many times have we said to somebody, "Oh, it's so nice to see you," and our body language is like, "Yeah, get away. I don't want to see you." So maybe sometimes not being able to see the body language is helpful to continue the conversation. But this idea that we need to make sure that we help other people to be in full relationship with us is so very important. I spoke last week about the importance of there being a chair, a seat at the table for everybody. And that doesn't just mean in politics or in church or things like that we make room for the other. But once they have their seat at the table, are we actually being even-handed about that? Are they sitting so far down the table that they can't see and hear what's being said by the head of the table? Are we allowing them the not the privilege, but the basic right of understanding everything that's on the table? No hidden agenda. No keeping some information from others. Just because they're at the table doesn't mean they necessarily understand what's happening all the time, and how important that is. How important it is to be transparent, and important it is to be clear. There have been many times in my ministry, even in my university years, when I was working away at something, or I've been working with a group of people, and we had the best of intentions. We had this plan. We were going to make this thing happen. And we had talked about it so much that we had it all hammered out in our heads. But when we went to begin it, to put it into place, other people were like, "Well, wait a minute. What do you mean? What's this about? How come? I don't understand. Why would you do that?" Because we had not been absolutely clear with people, we actually made people who were meant to feel included, we made them feel excluded. And generally speaking, what also happened was that by keeping their voices away from the conversation and not reaching out to them and saying, "What's your input? What can you bring to the conversation?" we missed giant steps. What they could bring to us was that piece of the puzzle that we couldn't see from our perspective. For instance, if I am planning a play day for kids in a church, and my thing is storytelling, then I am going to be heavy duty on, we're going to have storytelling, and we're going to have artwork about that story, and we're going to act out that story, and the kids are going to learn that story. But somebody else might come in and say, well, Rachel, I know you can't sing to save your life, so you've completely forgotten the importance of music. And that person says, well, we can sing songs about that story, and we can use music to teach people new ways to worship. And we can use music to be traveling music to get us from story time to art time and all these things. Awesome. But then somebody else comes in and says, you guys are nuts. Did you forget these are kids? They need snacks. They need time to run around and burn off steam. So that person brings to the table, we need to have cookies, and we need to have apples and oranges, and we need to have juice boxes, and we need to have bag lunches, and we have to have places to set up for snacks and meals, and we need to have handy wipes because kids are going to make a mess. You see, everybody coming to the table brings their different perspective, what I like to call their bailiwick, the thing that they're really good at or they're passionate about. And the more people we have come to the table and share their perspective, the more we can fill out that puzzle. The better able we are to plan something worth planning that is the best for everyone. And that works in the church, it works in politics, it works in school, it works in families. Everybody coming together to share their part. But just because we've invited them to the table does not mean that we have necessarily made everything clear and transparent. Sometimes, even though we're at the table, things can be quite opaque. Like Vice President Harris sitting there saying, I am Vice President Harris. My pronoun, I'm a woman. My pronouns are she and her. I am wearing a blue suit. Seems really simple. Seems overly descriptive. Like, why do we need that? Except for that person at the table who's saying, hello, all I can see is opaque. Give me something to work with. Give me something that makes this seem more transparent, or at least more translucent. I remember growing up as a teenager. Now, I'm almost 5'10", and I'm a big girl. I know that. When I was a teenager, I was pretty skinny, and I always had my hair cut really short. And the number of times people thought I was a guy, and I never, didn't pay much attention to it. But in later years in life, my poor husband will be going out, and people will have asked, now this is partly why my hair is big and curly now, because people would actually say, gentlemen, what can I get for you? And my husband would look like, what do you mean? Like he was going to jump up and defend me. Like, what are you doing? Calling my wife, she was a lady, a gentleman. And I was just like, whatever, because it happens all the time. That quick, when you go into Tim Hortons or you go to the grocery store and they don't really look at you, they just look at you real quick and then continue. The number of times someone has said to me, called me sir, because they don't see me. They see a quick view of this body that they might presume, unless, I got bumps in all the right places. I don't get how anybody could think I was a guy. However, it has happened too many times to count. And at first it didn't really bother me. And then eventually it did. Hence, I started growing my hair out and things like that. But so it's really more difficult for them not to realize that I'm a woman. However, with the new movement toward recognizing people's pronouns, with the movement toward recognizing not just the pronouns, but the person behind the pronouns, not what you assume, who you assume they are, but the person that they really are in their heart, that has become very personal for me. Because you see, I know what it is for someone to look at me and assume something different, assuming something that is completely opposite to what I am and who I am. And that knowing that their assumption about that changes everything. Even as silly as someone assuming I'm a guy at the Walmart checkout doesn't help me move that heavy case of water from the conveyor belt to my cart. But if they see me as a girl, they do. Now, that is shamelessly taking advantage of being a girl. But heck, if you got somebody who's willing to move a heavy 24 bottle case of water for you, you take advantage of it. My point being that sometimes it's really important that if we're going to call everyone to the table and give everybody a place at the table, we need to make sure that we present ourselves in a way that every other single person really truly sees who we are and what we have to offer at the table. That our vision of them is not opaque, nor do we allow others to have opaque vision of us. Vice President Harris saying, I am a woman, my pronouns are her and she, I am wearing a blue suit. For those people who were visually impaired, for those people who may not have been able to understand some part of the context in which she was speaking, she painted them a picture that they could now feel that they were part of the group gathered at the table. So kudos to her, because at the end of the day, whoever we are and whatever we do, we need to know that people gathered around the table aren't just gathered because we invited them and because it was the right thing to do to have them pull up a chair at the table, but because we appreciate them and we need their input so much that we are willing to bring them to the table, make as much transparency as possible for them, to allow them and us to be able to share our truth and our wisdom, that we might plan that amazing Children's Day for our church, or we may come up with the best business plan ever, or family vacation, or whatever it is that's gathering us together at the table. It's not enough that we have a seat at the table for everyone. It's important that we make others able to see, and that we ourselves are able to see clearly who is there and what they have to offer. Not what we assume they have to offer, and not who we assume they are, but who they really are, and the gifts they really do have to offer. We have to invite them to a seat at the table, and then we have to allow them to be themselves. And we must appreciate that as well. Can you just imagine how different conversations would be at boardrooms and church schools and living rooms and arenas and everywhere else that people gather? How much different they would be if every single person felt they had the right to be there, but they also felt that they were seen and heard when they were there. Just something to think about. Have a great day, and I will see you again tomorrow for Church at Home with Rachael.